Hi there guys, and welcome to another video. Now today I'm going to be replacing one of my favourite servers. Now a lot of you that know me, you know that I really love the Gen8 Microserver. It's very small form factor, you can fit in 4 hard drives and 1 SSD. Now for the last few years with my servers, I bought server cases off a company here in the UK called servercase.co.uk. And you can see here 3 previous ones that I've bought before. A 24 bay case and also 2 rack mounted water cooled case. Perfect for what I need. Now they ship all around the world, and if you're outside of the UK, well, you don't have to pay the VAT like we do. So basically you're getting it for 20% cheaper. Now I reached out to them because I wanted to do a small form factor build. And I asked if maybe they'd be kind enough to sponsor this video and send me one of their small form factor cases. And I chose this one here. Now I'm not going to bore you doing an unboxing, no one cares about that, it's just a cardboard box and what we're interested in is inside. And this here is what's inside the box. So you can see it's quite a similar size and form factor to the Gen8 Microserver. And again, it has 4 drive bays inside. So I'm going to put it on the desk and let's compare it to the Gen8. But before that, I'm just going to talk to you about what I want to put inside this. Now my first choice, I wanted to put in an N100 Intel CPU, extremely low power, and I picked up the ASRock N100M because it looked like it was going to fit from the measurements. But more about that later. Anyway, what I ended up in getting was the Gigabyte 610i taking DDR4 RAM. And I wanted to pair this up. No, not with an i9 CPU, there's no way I could cool that in such a small case. But I did want an Intel CPU and it had to have integrated graphics. So I picked up this i5 13400, which I think will go really well in the server we're putting together. And obviously it's going to need a small form factor heatsink. You know, we're not going to have much space in there, so I picked up this Noctua one. Anyway, as Arnold would say, enough talk, let's start. Okay guys, so here are the 2 cases side by side. You can see here the new case, it sticks out just a little bit more than the Gen8 Microserver does. In fact, let's measure the dimensions of each. So this one here is 25 centimeters or about 9 3/4 inches. And this one here is 30.5 centimeters or 12 inches. And let's measure the width. This one here is 23 centimeters or 9 inches wide. And this one here, 20 centimeters or 8 inches wide. So the in-win case is a little bit thinner, but a little bit longer. And obviously they're both the same height, 23 or 9 inches high. So very similar form factor. And if we look inside the Gen8 here, we can see the old server here has got 4 3.5 inch drives in these removable bays at the front, but also that little CD bit at the top there, well, that's not a real CD, it's actually got a 2.5 inch SATA drive for the cache drive in the top there. Okay, so this is the original server and we can see the 4 drives here, the 3.5s, and underneath, here's the cache drive. Now let's have a look at the hardware inside this server. The CPU here is a Xeon E3 1270V2. This was the fastest CPU I could actually put into the Gen8 Microserver. It gets a pass mark of 6,478. Not bad for its day, but if I compare it with the new CPU I've got, the i5 13400 has a pass mark of 24,920, and plus that it's got an iGPU that I can use for transcoding and other things as well. This server's got 16 gigs of DDR3 ECC RAM. That was the most the Gen8 could actually have, 2 sticks of 8 gigs, even though the CPU would actually support up to 32 gigs. 16 is all I could put in the Gen8. And the new server is going to have DDR4 RAM, 32 gigs but non-ECC. Anyway, let's jump back across to the build. Now I'm going to take out all of the hard drives now. Now the drives I've got there, a mixture between 18 16s and one 20 terabyte drive in there. As this was a backup server, I didn't bother with parity in it because it's just making a copy of the main server. And also because it can only take 4 3.5 inch drives, I didn't want to lose the additional space. And we can see in the new server, very similar, I've got the 4 drives. So this one also won't have parity. I'm just going to pop the existing drives straight in. So I'll pop these trays out ready now as well, I think. Okay, so let's take this apart, I think. Have a look inside the both. So inside the Gen8 Microserver, you have to excuse all the dust in here. You can put a 2.5 inch SATA drive. I've got my cache drive in there, but internally that's pretty much all you can fit. On this side here, you can see there's a PCIe slot, which I've got this GT710 plugged into. Obviously, you could put an HBA card and expand more drives in an external enclosure. So let's put that to one side, and let's open up this case here. So 2 thumb screws, that's nice. Now, I've got to try not to lose these. Knowing me, I probably will drop them on the floor and wonder where they are later. Okay, so looking inside here, we can see here we've got space for a 2.5 inch drive. Same on the top here, we could fit a 2.5 SSD or a CD DVD ROM drive. I don't know if we could fit one the other side. Probably you could put something here, but it doesn't look like it's actually made to actually fit it, but you could probably jerry rig something up inside. So let's undo this here. Okay, so we've got a power cable and obviously various screws to screw down the motherboard, I should think. For me, this power cable, not really much use because it's not UK, so not the end of the world, but still something to consider. If you're in the UK, you're going to need another cattle lead. So the nice thing about this case is it does have a built-in PSU. Obviously, you're not going to be running any really powerful graphics cards in this off this, but for NAS duties, which we're going to be using this for, this is more than adequate. Okay, so basically this is the case. And what's quite nice here is we can pull out the whole tray, put our motherboard on and slide it in. I really like that. Very similar to what the Gen8 Microserver can do. Again, at the back of the Gen8, you have to undo various things, I think, but this, trust me, it does slide out. Okay, anyway, enough about the Gen8, we'll look at it later. So at the beginning of the video, I did mention I really wanted to use the N100 CPU. It's got an iGPU, and ASRock made this mini board. Now, this board here, it is smaller than an actual micro ATX, but a little bit larger than an ITX board. Now they do an ITX board, which is a little bit smaller, but you have to use an external power supply to power the board, and I really didn't want to do that because we've got hard drives to power, etc. And this has got a built-in power supply, so that's why I got this board and not the actual ITX one. And I looked at the dimensions of it, and yeah, I know I should have really thought, it was pretty dumb. I thought, well, the dimensions, it will actually fit in, and it actually does fit in, but I would have to cut a piece out the side of the case to be able to have these IO bits put in, and I'd have to jerry rig something up because it doesn't fit this way, which is really sad. Again, I could probably put it this way and leave the side off if I really wanted to, but you don't buy a nice case in order to leave the side off, do you? So sadly, it wasn't quite right for this build. So anyway guys, you know how much I like my N100 CPUs. I've got one in another server that runs a couple of VMs, one for Home Assistant and one pfSense and a few other things. I keep threatening to do a video about that, and I really will get to it, guys. So let's put this back and use this another day. So anyway, I decided to go with the Gigabyte 8610i board. The reason being it was on offer on Amazon at the time, and I think I got it for about £75, which is a pretty good deal. Now I don't need anything fancy, so this motherboard is absolutely fine. I'm going to pop in here 2 sticks of 16 gigs, giving this server 32 gigs of RAM. We've got a PCIe slot. Now obviously I could put some sort of GPU in here, some low powered GPU, but because it's got iGPU, really, do I need to do that? Only if I wanted to do pass-through on this server, which yeah, I could do. But the nice thing is, it's got 4 SATA ports. Now, I really wanted to try and get one with 6. Then I could use a couple of SATA SSDs, as well as the 4 3.5-inch drives in this build. But I couldn't find one anywhere. And again, we've got a PCIe slot here, so HBA card or a SATA card. And I could actually put a few more ports on. But what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to use an NVMe with this. We can put an NVMe drive here, so that's going to be the cache on this build, as opposed to using a SATA. Okay, so let's put this out of the way, and now I know you're all going to moan I don't have an anti-static band. Well, I'm standing on a wooden floor, and I've grounded myself a few times, so I'm really not bothered about breaking anything from static electricity. In fact, I don't actually know anyone who's actually ever done that. I don't know if you guys do, but I'm sure it happens, but I think it's pretty rare. Okay, let's pop the IO shield on. Now I do like it that we can build it straight onto the tray. That's pretty nice. Let's pop that IO plate on. And just line that up. I always find it awkward with these little metal things on the back. I don't know if you do, guys. Getting everything lined up so they don't kind of go over any of the ports, etc. So, okay, it's going to take 4 screws, it looks like. Nice and easy. But in fact, thinking about it, I'm not going to screw it down because probably I really should put the CPU on first, shouldn't I? So I'm glad I didn't, and that's not in properly either. So I'm glad I didn't go all the way through and realised that I had to put like a bracket on this or something to get this CPU installed. So the heatsink here, I got a Noctua low profile cooler. Obviously it's got to better fit in to that very cramped space inside the case. So let's have a look at what we got here. Now this one, again saving money, was an Amazon warehouse returns. Not sure if it's been used before, but it looks in pretty good condition anyway. Who cares, hey, it was cheaper. Okay, we got a lovely case badge. No thank you, Noctua. Okay, so we've got 4 screws here. A low noise cable adapter there. And some thermal paste. I might use some different thermal paste. I'm not sure if I trust yours, Noctua, I'm afraid. Okay, so CPU here. i5-13400. Now actually, this one does come with its own cooler. I didn't actually know that. I didn't think it did come with a cooler. The last 2 Intel CPUs I bought didn't, but that was a 13900K and a 13600K. Neither of them had a cooler with it. So, I don't know. Maybe it'd actually fit into the case. Maybe there'd be clearance. But yeah, this CPU cooler, it's much better. Designed for small cases. So, let's fit it on. Okay, so it looks like from these instructions here, you kind of put it on top of the CPU, turn it over, and then screw it down through. So, yeah, doesn't look too difficult. This would basically go on here like that, I guess, and then screw in from the other side. So, yeah, like that. Yeah, Pretty easy. I like it. Good. So, where have I put the CPU? Still in the box. Okay, so this bit here, got to be pretty careful. Now, I've got to be really careful we don't bend these pins here, putting the CPU in. Always got to be super careful about that. Just putting it in at a slight angle, knocking one, and it's game over for the motherboard. So as well on the CPU, you line up the little notches on the actual CPU. Let's bring it a bit closer. And we line them up. So that's dropped in nicely. Now it's always best to not remove the top cover until you're ready to lock this down. So I'm going to remove it now. And pop that down. Okay, so we could use this thermal paste. The tube looks like it's pretty much empty. Let's find some better stuff. Got some MX4 here. That's probably a bit better quality than what we've got here. And I'm going to pop a little bit in the middle there. Okay. Now I'm never really sure whether I should spread it out or just leave it where it is. I kind of feel like I want to spread it out on there. So let's try and do that. Use a bit of cardboard off here. So with that done, let's work out what side the fan cable goes. So that's going to click onto here. So may as well put it on now, I guess. And have this go around this way. Now I guess we've got to somehow turn this over. Cooler is almost on. Let's get a screwdriver and tighten this up. I'm going to do the old corner to corner method so it tightens up evenly. Right, I think that's about alright. Okay, so the cooler's on, so I think now let's put it into the tray. Let's make sure this is actually clipped in properly. Okay, it's quite nice. The bags are actually labelled, so those are hard drive screws. And screws for motherboard and PCIe. So, this is what we need. What else have we got here? Some 3.5-inch hard drive screws and 2.5 hard drive screws. And this thing here, an accessory rail, because yeah, we can put a thin CD-ROM drive in. It's like on the Gen 8. We could put an adapter and change the optical drive bay into another 2.5 SSD bay. And that's probably what I will do on this server. I think I'll probably end up putting a SATA card here so I can put another 2 drives in. It all comes down really to what kind of power usage I can get this down to. When idle, I could get the Gen8 Microserver down to about 30 watts. Now that was with all of the hard drives spun down and with the CPU governor on power save. So I'm hoping this server is going to be equal to or lower than 30 watts when idle. I think I've got a good chance of that, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, so I've got an NVMe drive here, 1 terabyte. Now it's a kind of pretty weird brand. I got this in my other N100 machine that I was talking about earlier. And I swapped the NVMe in that for a 4 terabyte one. So I've got this spare. Okay, where did I put the hard drive screw? Okay, good, I haven't lost it. Okay, so let's screw this down. Hopefully the screwdriver's magnetic. Okay, legendary it is, that's good. So for RAM, I've got some Crucial DDR4 at 3200. Now I've lost my scissors. I really don't know how I managed to lose things when I haven't actually moved out of this room since I started, and I had the scissors a moment ago. Anyway, don't need the scissors, we can rip it open. Okay, one thing I noticed about RAM the other day, guys, I'm not sure if you've ever noticed this on RAM, and I'm not sure how well you can see this, but if you notice here, on either end of DDR4 RAM, it's slightly kind of thinner where these gold pins are, and it's larger in the middle. I never knew that until the other day when I was looking.
You'll also notice there's a curve in the center of the DIMM. This is to make the module stronger when being pressed into the socket and provides better electrical contact.
I thought I had some faulty RAM at first until I looked at my other RAM and saw it was all the same. There we are, nice 32 gig server. The Gen 8 I could only get 16 gigs total. Although the Gen 8 was ECC RAM, this one isn't, but really I don't mind that at all. So that is everything in. Now we need to connect everything into the case. So now this will just slide in nicely. There we are, and see we've got quite a lot of clearance on that fan. It's quite a long way away. You know, I think they could have probably made this case a bit shorter. You know, maybe they wanted it that little bit longer, but because they didn't want the heatsink and fan kind of right under here, which makes sense. Now I'd be interested to actually know how long this bit, you know, is this the length of the extra on this case? Let's grab the tape measure and I'm going to have a look, because I kind of think it's interesting to know. So looking here, about 2.5 inches, which pretty much is about the extra length that this case was, so maybe that's why they made that design choice. I think that's quite logical. Okay, so if we look on the back plate here, let me switch across to the other camera a moment so I can show you a better view of that. If we look here, we've got 2 Molexes that power all 4 drives and 4 regular SATAs. Right, so the last Molex power going in, and you can see here that all of the SATA cables are already plugged in as well. So we just need to connect the power to the motherboard, the on and off switches, that kind of thing, and also the USB headers. The thing I like about this is it is long enough to actually put everything together outside of the case, then slide it in. Okay, so there's the main motherboard power. Right, let's wire the switches from the case to the motherboard. To look at where they go on the motherboard, we can have a look at the manual, but I don't really hold up much hope for that. Okay, so well, this is the manual. As you can see, pretty useless really. No use to tell us any detail. Nowadays you always have to look up a manual online. They don't really supply anything so much with the cheaper motherboards. But before looking at the manual online, I always like to take a photograph of the front panel header, just so you can see the pins easily, and it's easier to kind of look on the manual and see what it's relating to. So here's the front panel header cables coming off the case. Now there's one thing that's quite interesting about these wires. I'm going to try and show them on the camera now. Now there's no power switch on here, no reset switch on here. In fact, the only one would actually connect to this particular motherboard may be the hard drive LED. But really we wouldn't need to connect that either, because we'll see lights on the actual front of the hard drive cage as well when the hard drives are active. Now if we take a look at this other wire here that's coming off, this red and black one, which has got C, NC and NO on it, which is C is common, NO I think is normal, NC I've forgotten what that means, but basically it's a normal switch. And we've got this kind of switch thingy on the back here. Now I'll just switch to the other camera to show you that. You see there's this little switch on the back. And if we look here, this is obviously if we want to wire up the front. So this case looks like we can have a front or a rear power connector, which is quite interesting for a little case like this. Okay, so there we've got power LED, reset and power. So let's pop them on. Okay, so that's pretty much everything wired up. I think we can slide the tray back into the chassis now. So now I'm going to just try and bunch all of these together. I'm going to pop and get some cable ties and do a really bad job of cable management. Not my strongest suit. Okay, so I've got my cable ties. Let's try and tidy this up a little bit. Obviously it's more important to have good cable management in a case with restricted room inside, so there's a bit more airflow. I do feel tempted to actually cut this off, to be honest. I really don't see myself ever needing that, so goodbye. Okay, so I'm going to push all of this back in here. I'm not going to cable tie this because if I want to pull the tray out in the future, I want it to easily be able to move forward. Okay, so I think it's time to test and see if it powers up and then plug it into a monitor and just check everything boots. Okay, so let's boot up and hope for the best. Now normally, to be honest, I'll do this not inside the case, but today I thought I'd risk it. I'm feeling lucky. Okay, so there we are, booted into the BIOS. Now slightly off screen, you can't see here. The CPU temp is 29 degrees Celsius. I'll just let this bed in and run for a little while to see if the temperature goes up much. So 20 minutes later, the CPU temperature is at 37 degrees. I often find that when you've got things on the BIOS, the temperature goes quite high because there's no power management from the actual software. So I'm pretty sure that the temps in here are all good. So I think it's time to put the hard drives in, boot up Unraid, then we can compare the power usage from the Gen8 Microserver to this one. Okay, so in the original server, the Gen8 Microserver, I had 4 spinning Rust drives and 1 SSD. Now I'm only going to put in actually 3 of the spinning Rust drives at the moment because I need one of the caddies to put in the 2.5 inch SSD. So this is the SSD from the Gen8 Microserver in this like CD-ROM drive adapter. So I'm going to pull that out and just pop it into one of these caddies here. So once the server's booted up, I'm going to transfer the data off the SSD onto the internal NVMe in the server. Then after that, I'll pop out the SSD, put back in the spinning Rust drive, then I'll have the complete array and my cache drive, but the cache will now be NVMe. Right, so the drives are all ready to put in the server now. There's the 2.5 and there's the 3.5. So let's slide them in. It's really easy to do. Now, these are pretty good quality, I think. Yeah, they feel really solid as they clip in there. And they seem to slide in really nice. It does seem really nice quality. Is something I always worry about with drive trays, but they're all in. I think we should get the Unraid USB flash drive, boot up. I'll transfer the data off the SSD onto the NVMe and then put the other hard drive in and we'll do some power tests. Okay, so with the flash drive from the old server, I'm booted up and now into the GUI. In the old server, I actually had 5 SATA devices, the 4 data disks and the cache drive. And because this motherboard only has 4 SATA ports, temporarily I had to remove one of the data disks, and that's why we can see here it's an invalid configuration. So what I need to do is I need to just copy the data off that old cache drive and put it onto the NVMe. Then I can remove it, it will free back up the slot and I can put the original data drive back in. Right, so what I'm going to do, because the array won't start, I'm going to make a new config. I'm going to preserve all the slots here, keep it exactly the same. And because I'm replacing the cache drive and I'm going to be copying data around, I'm going to disable both the Docker service and the VM service. Okay, so now back across onto the main tab here, and I'm going to swap the cache slot to be the new NVMe. So for the cache drive, I want this to be formatted in ZFS and the compression set to on. Now thinking about it, there's probably going to be a problem with the old cache drive because it's formatted in ZFS as well, and so its pool name is going to be the same, it's going to be cache as well. So that's going to be a bit of an issue when I try and transfer the data. So what I'm going to have to do, I think, is I'm going to put this back as the original cache drive just for a moment. And now whilst it's here, I'm going to actually rename the pool to, I think, cache old. Okay, so now there won't be a conflict with the pool names. Now I probably don't really need to do this, but I'm just going to start up the array anyway. The only reason really is just to double check that the actual name of the pool's been renamed and it's stuck. It has, so that's fine. So I'll go and stop the array now and swap the cache drive to the new one, and we should be good. Now obviously before I start everything up and format it, I'm going to rename the new one to be just cache, not cache old. And now because I'm swapping the cache over, I'm going to have to make another new configuration. So again, I'm just going to choose all, click yes and then apply. And now I'm ready to start back up the array and get the copy done from the old cache to the new. As it's a new disk in the array, it's going to want to ask me to format it, which I'm going to do. Okay, so now the array's started, but obviously the old cache drive's not mounted. I'm using unassigned devices to mount it. And to copy the data, I just made a really simple user script where I just use rsync to copy from one disk to the other. So with the data copied across, it was time to shut down the server, remove the old cache drive, and put back in the data drive that I couldn't fit in. Okay, so we can see here, all of the data disks are back in the server and the NVMe cache. So the backup server, it's got a total usable space in the array of 71.8 terabytes, and I've got 13 terabytes free. Now, like I said, there's no parity in this server because this one's main function is to back up my main server, which has a total usable space of 79 terabytes. But also it backs up a couple of other things on the network as well. Okay, so we can see all of the hard drives are spun down. So I think now's the time to find out the moment of truth. Is this server as power efficient as the Gen 8 with this newer hardware I've got in here, the i5-13400 and the 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM? Well, we know DDR4 RAM is actually more energy efficient than DDR3. So even though I've got more RAM, it should be more energy efficient. Yay, okay, cool, look at that, 26 watts, 27, and even going down as low as 25 watts. So basically the server now, this new backup server, is probably about 12% more power efficient than the Gen 8. So that's really awesome, a much more powerful machine, about the same form factor, so a really great result. Anyway guys, that brings us to the end of the video. Now I want to give a really big thank you to servercase.co.uk for sending me this small form factor case. Now I really like the case myself, and if you guys want to pick one up, then check out their website. I'll put the link in the description below. Now as always, I want to give a really big thank you to all of my patrons and supporters out there. Thank you so much guys for all of your support. If it wasn't for you, I really wouldn't be able to make these videos. Anyway guys, it's getting late here and it's time for me to go. But whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good, and I'll catch you in the next video.